Hello friends, welcome to Friday Beyond Spotlights, Hong Kong's new insightful program looking into the lives of our most remarkable high achievers and getting their take on this city's past, present and future.
Our guests will give their personal perspectives for a new generation, inspiring Hong Kong for a better society.
So sit back and relax and we'll take you beyond the spotlights.
Welcome to Friday Beyond Spotlights, where we invite leading minds and game changers with incomparable experience and unique knowledge to come onto our light-hearted yet informative show to help business leaders and the wider community gain insights, grasp opportunities, and see behind and beyond spotlights so we can get the full picture, dream bigger, achieve more together. I am your host for the episode. My name is Nick Chan, lawyer and lawmaker. And Friday Beyond Spotlights is honored and pleased to present to you our guest today, Grenville Cross, GBS, QC, SC, a barrister and first Director of Public Prosecution for Hong Kong SAR post-1997. Grenville, welcome onto the show.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you for sharing with us about strengthening Hong Kong's rule of law, past, present and future.
Pleasure.
Grenville, the rule of law is the cornerstone for social order and economic activities in Hong Kong. You were the Queen's Counsel. You were the Deputy Director of Public Prosecution before 1997. And after that, you became the first Director of Public Prosecution for the Hong Kong SAR until 2009. So you share a special bond and passion with Hong Kong. Can you share with the international business audience what you think of the rule of law here in Hong Kong?
Well, the rule of law, as you say, is the secret to Hong Kong's great success over the years, both before 1997 and after 1997. Its key elements are such things as an independent judiciary, a strong legal profession, people who are committed to the well-being of Hong Kong, independence in all areas for people who are involved in legal work, a respect for legal traditions, a belief in the system of precedent, which is very much a part of the common law and provides for certainty in the interpretation of the law, and a respect for legal values.
Is there anyone who is above the law now, before or after the Colonial Rule?
Well, as you may know, in the United Kingdom, the monarch is above the law. The monarch, the theory is that the monarch ultimately approves the laws, has to sign all the laws that come into effect, and cannot be prosecuted. So the monarch is the only person who cannot be taken to court in the United Kingdom. And this fiction was maintained in Hong Kong, of course, because the governor, as the representative of the Queen or the King of England, as it may be at any particular time, could not be prosecuted either.
You mean before July 1997, the governor appointed from the UK is above the law and cannot be prosecuted in Hong Kong? Unbelievable.
There's been a lot of other improvements since those days. Locals did not have any votes or say in who was the governor, and no elections were held to locally appoint lawmakers in Hong Kong for most of the period pre-1997. It wasn't until the Sex Discrimination Ordinance that came into force in 1996 that a well-known colonial club opened its doors to women.
Do you have any insights why post-1997 Hong Kong doesn't just follow the civil law legal system in mainland China?
The people of Hong Kong were happy with the legal system that they had. If anything, it could be improved, for example, by having a court of final appeal in Hong Kong rather than people having to go all the way to London. And then the common law system was placed at the heart of Hong Kong's future when the National People's Congress, of course, enacted the Basic Law in 1990. So the whole emphasis was on continuity and maintaining the pre-existing legal system, because that was regarded as being the best for Hong Kong and most reassuring for its people who were familiar with this system.
How has things changed, or reflecting on the recent passage of the National Security Law, which is passed by the National People's Congress under the civil law legal system? How does that work in Hong Kong?
Article 4, it makes it clear that human rights shall be respected and protected in the application of the national security law. In addition to which, it's also stipulated that the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which in my area of criminal justice protects all the rights that defendants enjoy in criminal trials, they shall be protected in the enforcement of the of the national security law. Article 5 goes further and makes clear that the rule of law shall be protected, the principle of the rule of law shall be protected in the application of the national security law, and that people who are charged with criminal offences shall enjoy the traditional protections, including presumption of innocence, a right to legal counsel, and so on. And so the basic traditions of the common law are specifically highlighted and put front and centre of the national security law in order to make it clear to everyone that even though this is a tough law, which is clamping down on people who want to harm Hong Kong, the key protections that suspects enjoy and have always enjoyed under the common law since early times, they are being protected under these new provisions. And that, of course, is profoundly reassuring for the people of Hong Kong. And it's important that people, I think, do appreciate this, because in the chorus of criticism, this is often disregarded, and disregarded for political reasons.
Does the national security law impede or supports international businesses who choose to call Hong Kong their home?
What businesses look for is stability, and they look for a place where they can do their business without fear, without danger, without violence. And of course, they were highly scared during the protest movement of 2019-2020, which turned extremely violent and made life extremely difficult for all types of business people. And so once the national security law was enacted in June 2020, things were able to start returning to normal. People felt safe again. Businesses could resume their normal activities. And so this was exactly what was required to provide the economic stability that the business world wants. And of course, this is why the new law was welcomed by, for example, the banks, by the hotel chains, by the businesses, and so on.
During the riots of 2019 and 2020, there was a spate of illegal acts advocating Hong Kong independence and violence. Rioters held over 5,000 petrol bombs, and the police seized over 10,000 of those explosives. The social unrest that lasted for more than 8 months plunged Hong Kong residents into great distress. But thanks to the National Security Law of 2020, funding from overseas to encourage insurrections can now be frozen, and the overall crime rate has dropped.
Many people were too scared to go out at that time. Jobs and livelihoods were lost. Thankfully, law and order has been restored, and Hong Kong once again is one of the safest cities in the world. People from many diverse backgrounds are now living in harmony.
Has there been cases prosecuted under the 2020 National Security Law, and what does that tell us?
Only very few people have actually been prosecuted under the National Security Law. As of last November, I think about 155 had been arrested, and only about 100 had been charged. But only a handful of those, 3 or 4 or 5, have actually gone to court for trial. So it's still extremely early days. But what we can say is that it's clear from the cases that have been tried that all the traditional protections which are contained in the Basic Law and in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights are being upheld as the national security law envisaged they should be, because it is, as I said earlier on, human rights heavy. We can see, for example, that people are only being charged if there is a reasonable prospect of conviction, that when they go to court they have the right of legal counsel, and that they are only being convicted if the court is satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that they are guilty of the charge which has been brought against them. So the national security law has fitted nicely into our traditional legal apparatus, if I can put it that way, and is so far functioning successfully. And I would have thought that most people would find that profoundly reassuring.
You were born overseas. What attracted you to come to Hong Kong, and what attracted you to stay on to contribute to strengthening the rule of law in Hong Kong?
When this opportunity came up to come to Hong Kong as a prosecutor, I jumped at the opportunity and came out to Hong Kong, enjoyed the work enormously. I was able to do very high-grade work at a far earlier stage than would have been possible if I'd stayed in the United Kingdom. And of course, I came to love the place, to like the people, like the way of life, like the way in which the sky's the limit, people can achieve anything. Low taxation, obviously, and incentives for working hard, and respect for authorities. So these were the really things that I liked, and so I stayed, obviously, and made a small contribution of my own to Hong Kong's legal development. Did a bit of writing about Hong Kong legal matters, producing legal textbook on the sentencing law in Hong Kong, which is still in use.
I have a copy of your sentencing book.
Good.
It's the go-to text. We all go to that. What is the key takeaway, for you as the author, having wrote it? What is the key takeaway? Is sentencing fair in Hong Kong?
Well, sentencing is fair. Yes, we have our own system of sentencing. It's developed by the courts and of course by the legislature itself. The courts lean over backwards to be fair to people who are convicted of criminal offences, which is a very good thing.
As we reflect on the past, introspectively look at where we are today, and gaze at the future, what is in store for the people of Hong Kong, for the rule of law in Hong Kong, for businesses who call Hong Kong their home?
Well, we have a stable legal environment. We have an independent judiciary. We have a strong legal profession. So all the essentials are there for a sound future. Then I see no reason why the present system should not be extended beyond 2047, which I think would be reassuring to most people in Hong Kong and indeed to many businesses as well. But now that one country, two systems is back on track, then I am hopeful that the view will be taken ultimately that the present system, by and large, should be continued after 2047 because it will be in the interests of not only the people of Hong Kong, but also of the rest of China.
Thank you, Grenville. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Friday Beyond Spotlights. We have with us today British barrister and the first Director of Public Prosecution for the Hong Kong SAR, Grenville Cross. Who is Grenville Cross?
Well, he's a lawyer, a professional prosecutor. Until, as you said, 2009, I was a prosecutor here in Hong Kong for many years, and before that, a prosecutor for a short time in London, in England. After I left the Department of Justice, I became an international prosecutor with the International Association of Prosecutors, and I am currently the vice chairman of their Senate. So I've always really been a prosecutor, as part of my prosecutorial work, it's been a fascinating life. Before 1997, I often used to go to the Privy Council in London to represent Hong Kong in appeals, which went from the Court of Appeal to London, which was then the ultimate appellate court for Hong Kong, the Privy Council in Downing Street. So it's fascinating going into Downing Street, going through all the security, having your bags checked, and then making your way to the Privy Council offices, which were right next door to the Prime Minister's home at 10 Downing Street. And then going into the Privy Council itself, obviously it was overawing and very nerve-wracking, but it was fascinating to appear before the law lords and to put the Hong Kong case for the Department of Justice, well, the then legal department of Hong Kong. Yes, I remember the first case that I did in the Privy Council was in 1988, and it was a Triad Society case which had been to the Court of Appeal, and the Attorney General of Hong Kong wasn't happy with the decision of the Court of Appeal. So the Attorney General appealed to the Privy Council in London. So I was asked to go across and do the case against a London Queen's Counsel. So I did the case, I remember, at the end of 1988, and then we had to wait a month or so until we got the result.
Did you win?
We won the case.
Well
yes,
done.
yes.
Well done.
I was very, 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 very chuffed with that, but not as happy as my father. He was more excited than me. And so he chose to commemorate that occasion by giving me a pocket watch.
Oh, can you show us?
Which is here. It's an English pocket watch, which is still keeping good time. And then he also had the date of the judgment, which was about a month later, engraved on it. So he was extremely chuffed, and that made me very happy too.
Grenville, I understand you've brought another item to share with us today.
Indeed, I have, Nick.
Please share with us.
Well, Nick, I've always been very interested in history from a very early age. And in fact, I almost became a historian. But I ended up, of course, going into the law. And I've been fascinated by the history of not only Hong Kong, but of China itself. And I'm now very much involved in the Hong Kong Collectors Society. I've been quite interested in recent times in the history of the late Qing dynasty, the last Emperor Puyi, and the system that operated during his time. And I well remember that on my first visit to Tianjin in 1991, I was by myself and I was walking around various streets of the city, and I found a little antique shop. And while I was in there, I saw a very attractive stone, and obviously I don't speak Putonghua, and I couldn't speak to the shop owner, but we negotiated a price nonetheless, and I brought it back to Hong Kong, and I took it to an expert here in Hong Kong and asked him what it was, and he told me that it was a Mandarin hat button.
Oh,
Yeah.
Can you show us?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So this was the hat button that I found.
Wow.
And it's actually it's coral, as I say, and there were 9 grades of Mandarin, and this was grade number 2. So in the old days of the Qing dynasty, you could tell the rank of the officials by the hat button in the top of their hat.
Oh, I see.
So this was number 2, and I always wanted to get number 1 as well, and it took me some time to find it. But about 5-6 years ago, I was on a visit to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, and again I went to an antique shop, and what should I see on a shelf there but the Mandarin hat button number 1,
Wow.
which is ruby, and which is this one. So this is very interesting indeed, because there you have the hat button. So I then set about building up a complete collection, which I've now got. So whenever I went to antique shops, and particularly in Beijing, I was able to complete the set. And I just brought one other one to show you. This is the number 3.
Right.
This is the sapphire,
Right.
which is grade 3 Mandarin would wear that one.
Wow.
So it's very interesting, and it's fascinating once you do study the late Chinese history, particularly in the Qing dynasty.
Can I invite you to share your well wishes for Hong Kong?
Well, Hong Kong, I think, now has a great future ahead of it. It has a new national security regime, which is working extremely well and has restored stability and decency to Hong Kong. It has a new electoral system, which has ensured that the city can once again function normally, that it has a responsible legislature who will enact the laws which the city needs. And now that Hong Kong has returned to normality, there are good hopes, I think, that Hong Kong will now go from strength to strength, of course, once the pandemic has been resolved, and that we have a very bright future ahead of us, not only within China generally, with China shortly becoming the world's largest economy, but also in the Greater Bay Area. So as long as the people in Hong Kong take full advantage of the opportunities which are there and which are now becoming accessible to them through legal and other professional qualifications, then the sky's the limit.
Grenville, you've been for years supporting protection of children. Could you share some tips for our young generation?
Well, when I first came to Hong Kong many years ago, one of the reasons I came was that I saw great opportunities in Hong Kong, I saw great challenges, and I saw a great future. And once I got here, I saw all of those were fulfilled, and that Hong Kong still has great opportunities, great challenges, and an even greater future than when I first came out here all those years ago. And I think it's very important for the younger generation to focus on this and to realize that they do have a great chance in life. Hong Kong, of course, has marvelous schools. It has great universities, as is acknowledged around the world, and its various faculties are extremely highly regarded in the academic world internationally. So it's very important that people do take advantage of the educational opportunities which are available to them. And then once they qualify, the sky really is the limit.
Thank you, Grenville. Grenville, let's get a bit more personal. I'd like to fire you some rapid questions. What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Your favorite ice cream flavor?
Vanilla.
Favorite drink?
Probably a gunner.
Favorite place to eat?
Chu Chow restaurant.
A place that you would bring your friends from overseas to?
Oh, I normally take them to Llama Island.
Favorite type of music?
Probably rhythm and blues.
Favorite song?
You know Alicia Keys?
Yeah?
Girl on Fire, I like that one.
And your favorite childhood game?
A game called Conkers. I don't know if you know Conkers, but it's a round fruit or round nut that grows on trees, and you would put a string through it, and then put a knot at the end, and then you would play with your friends. You'd try and destroy each other's conkers.
How do you relax?
Well, I try and go walking and hiking as much as I can on the island.
Do you have any hidden talents?
Well, my wife says I make good breakfasts.
The last book you read,
That was one by a historian called Andrew Roberts, which was his life of Napoleon Bonaparte.
the biggest misconception about you?
Well, many people know I'm bad at languages, and they think that I don't understand any Cantonese, but that's a misconception, Nick.
Your proudest moment?
Proudest? Oh, I think it would have to be having been appointed the first DPP of Hong Kong after the handover in 1997.
The nicest thing anyone has ever said?
Well, as you know, Nick, I'm a professional prosecutor and have been for many, many years. And one of the best things that you could say to a prosecutor is that you're a very fair prosecutor. So I was always very happy when people told me that.
And your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is being trapped in the lift. I suffer from claustrophobia, and I'd hate being trapped in a lift.
Biggest mistake?
Biggest mistake? Well, I don't think I made, unfortunately, Nick, I don't think I made too many mistakes, but in retrospect, it'd probably been better if, when I was still at school, I tried harder to learn foreign languages. I was hopeless at languages, but and I largely gave up for that reason. But maybe if I'd tried harder, I could have made a bit more progress.
Qualities you admire about your parents?
Well, like most good parents, they were very devoted. They were very committed to me. They wanted to inspire me. And I remember my father in particular was always a great believer that even though you'll encounter setbacks in life, don't let them get you down. Pick yourself up and get on with life. And it's important never to accept defeat. A setback is not a defeat. So always pick yourself up and always fight back.
Your dream job?
Dream job? Well, anything helping Hong Kong, really.
Great. What advice would you give your younger self?
When you go through life, you do have setbacks, and they make you depressed. But try and look at the bigger picture and look at the long term, that today's setback can turn into tomorrow's triumph.
Thank you, Grenville. Well, thank you for joining us on Friday Beyond Spotlights. Be well.
Such a legendary globetrotter who defends the rule of law.
People will not forget his contributions to the Hong Kong justice system.
Thank you for watching Friday Beyond Spotlights. Till next time, goodbye.